Lord Triesman.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing my name on the order.
Minister Lord Parkinson of Whitley Bay.
My Lords, the Government is committed to promoting diversity and inclusion as well as safety and fairness across all levels of sport. We believe this guidance is well researched and well considered. It acknowledges the complexity of balancing inclusion, fairness and safety, and it provides a decision-making framework to help individual sports decide what is right for their circumstances. It thereby helps to address a gap which has been present for too long in the sports sector.
Triesman.
Thank the Minister for that response, and I declare my interest as a former chairman of the Football Association. In 2009, we successfully invested £11 million to boost a brilliant sport, women's football. As with all sports, the aim was to compete in a fair way, to do it with integrity, with player safety and inclusion. And I think the Sports Council report makes it undeniably clear that including male-bodied transgendered people in most female sports vitiates these principles and will undermine those sports. Sports administrators admit their current confused approach is not fit for purpose, but they fear an angry response. Will the Minister meet with me and other sports administrators to generate advice on securing appropriate transgender involvement whilst protecting the fairness and safety of female sports? Advice which will wholly guarantee women's genuine sporting competition and integrity.
Well, my Lords, I think, if I may, I'll start with the very opening words of the foreword from this guidance, which says we want sport to be a place where everyone can be themselves, where everyone can take part, and where everyone is treated with kindness, dignity and respect. The guidance is based on evidence and research. It's taken a lot of views and consultation. It's right that sports bodies have their own rules and will work on implementing these in relation to their own sport. It probably won't be for me to meet the Noble Lord, but I will certainly take his request back to the Sports Minister, and I'm sure he'll be happy to have that meeting.
Ernest Noakes.
My Lords, the latest guidance does allow for the possibility of testosterone suppression to permit transgender women to take part in women's sports, but this is costly and intrusive for them and does not guarantee fairness for women. Does my noble friend agree that for almost all sports the only rational solution, which is safe and fair for all, is to have two categories: an open category for everyone and one reserved for natal women only?
Well, the guidance looks into the question of testosterone suppression, and many people working or competing in sport don't consider that that has created fairness or safety in their individual sports. The evidence is clear that there are retained advantages in strength, stamina and physique for the average transgender woman with or without testosterone suppression. It's not proved to be the silver bullet that many hoped it would be. That's why the sports councils are encouraging governing bodies to consider alternative approaches for their sport. In some cases that will be universal participation, in some it won't, but it's right that they do that on a case-by-case basis.
My Lords, I do not refer to the debate around this question, but I am deeply concerned about the public debate around trans issues and trans women in particular, and the continuous depiction of them as a threat. Therefore, does the Noble Lord the Minister agree that whenever we raise issues with regards to any minority, that we should be specific, evidence-based, and never knowingly or unwittingly fuel prejudice, hatred or misrepresentation, especially against minorities such as trans women who daily face dangerous defamation and misrepresentation?
Well, I strongly agree with the Noble Lord, and I'm pleased to say I believe the Sports Council's work has followed that approach. The intention of their guidance is to encourage sports to think in innovative ways to ensure that nobody is left out, and I'm mindful that these exchanges will be followed by many people who are affected on a personal level, and I want everyone to hear very clearly that we want everybody to have every opportunity to enjoy, compete and excel in sport.
Hunt of King's Heath.
My Lords, doesn't that mean that we should ensure that there is a way to have full, open and tolerant debate? That those organisations who proselytise a no-debate concept and accuse people of raising legitimate issues as being transphobic should resist and desist. And, my Lords, would he generally... He can't inform sports organisations what to do. What he can do is to encourage them to have courage to actually take on board what is in this guidance.
Well, again, I agree with the Noble Lord about the importance of tolerant debate, such as we have in your Lordship's House, and as the Sports Councils say in their guidance, we hope to see sports bodies across the UK engaging in the conversation in a respectful way and to develop policies in this area which help facilitate access for everyone to participate. A number of governing bodies have already said that what they're going to do in light of it, and we encourage others to look at it as well.
The report seems to be a fairly reasonable attempt to try and square a circle between safety, integrity of sport and the right of inclusion. Will the government assist those governing bodies in making sure that they do not have a policy that excludes people from low-level recreational sport, if they're in the trans category, and also make sure that it is not used in any way to restrict people in sports where men and women compete on even terms? I refer to the equestrian sports for a starting point.
Yes, I agree. The Sports Council's guidance supports this as well, as it aims to help governing bodies determine the right position for their particular sport. As it says, what's right for one sport may not be right for another, and of course it looks at the issue of low-level and recreational sport as well as competitive sport, and that's the job for the governing bodies then to take forward in relation to their own.
Lord Bassam of Brighton.
Well, my lords, for many sports, for many of us, sport is a unifying force, whether it's taking to the pitch with a diverse group of teammates or supporting a team from the grandstand. My lords, as the Sports Council Equality Group noted, the two main views on this matter couldn't be reconciled, requiring a reset and fresh thinking. Rather than attempting to shut down this exercise, as some might, does the Minister endorse the group's suggestion that individual sports explore whether more than one version of their sport can be offered in order to meet different aims?
Yes, as the guidance says that there can be no one-size-fits-all approach that covers every sport at every level in the country, and that's why it's right that the governing bodies look at what might be appropriate in their particular sport so that they can balance as much as they can inclusion, safety and fairness.
My Lords, allegedly the Ministry of Defence's inclusive language guide, which quotes verbatim from Stonewall, advises staff to take care using the word female. The aim is to avoid erasing gender non-conforming people and members of the trans community. As this risks erasing women instead and cuts across the Defence Secretary's drive for the military to become more female-friendly, is this an example of a lobbying group obstructing the policy of the elected government?
Colleagues at the Ministry of Defence to answer about their guide, but the Sports Council's guidance doesn't contain this wording or indeed offer any advice on language. It aims to help sports to consider how to be inclusive without erasing anybody.
Baroness Wilcox of Newport.
I'm sure the Minister would agree that we should do all we can to increase participation in sport. So does the Minister share the aspiration of the 5 sports councils to see increased transgender participation in sport and support their message to create novel or modified versions of some sports to increase inclusion?
Yes, increasing everybody's participation in sport is the main aim of the government's strategy, Sporting Future. So I certainly support the message from the sports councils to individual governing bodies to think in innovative and creative ways to ensure that nobody's left out. As the Noble Lady says, that might involve novel or modified versions of their sport. Creating the right environment is important so that everybody, whoever they are, can take part and get active.
Fox of Buckley.
It's clear that trans women can't belong in the female sports category because they have a male performative advantage, and however they identify, and that's inherently unfair. But obviously trans women should, of course, be able to compete fairly in sport. But will the Minister meet up with Dr Nicola Williams and colleagues from Fair Play for Women, who have some excellent detailed proposals for including trans people in sport without disadvantaging women, and they're courageous enough to open up the debate, not close it down?
Well, my lords, as I say, this varies from sport to sport. I took part in your lordship's full-bore rifle match shooting team against the other place. I regret to say we lost, but that's a sport on which men and women already compete on an equal basis. There are some sports which are games of skill, some of stamina, some of strength, and that's why it's right that there's a case-by-case approach for each individual sport. I will take forward the suggestion of a meeting as I did with the Noble Lord Triesman.
Baroness Hoy.
Sport really does have the power to change lives, and I saw that when I was Sports Minister, but also competition is hugely important for enjoyment in sport. But it has to be fair, and it has to be seen to be fair. Does the Noble Lord the Minister agree that the evidence is increasingly suggesting that the approach of simply measuring testosterone levels in the blood is not taking into account the full breadth of biological differences between people who have gone through male versus female puberty, and that can lead to unfairness in competitive sport?
Yes, as I say, the Sports Council's work looked into this, and to quote them again, they said, "The research we currently have shows that testosterone reduction or suppression does not negate all the physiological advantages of having developed testosterone-driven strength, stamina and physique." That's why their advice is to the individual governing bodies to look at what is right for their sport, so that they can balance inclusion with fairness and with safety, so that people can enjoy sport, whether that's competitive or recreational.
My Lords, all supplementary questions have been asked, and we now move to